Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to welcome everyone and thank you for coming today. First of all, I'd like to start off with asking you to open your Bibles, if you have them on you, to Luke chapter 10, verse 30 through 35. When a man came to Jesus in the Old Testament, he asked him, "How shall I love thy neighbor?" Jesus replied with the parable of the Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan goes into a story of a man who was journeying to a close-by village who was actually mugged and beaten to within an inch of his life and left on the side of the road to die. People kept walking by and not helping this man. Even a priest walked by, another Levite walked by, and actually came down to a Samaritan man who was actually an enemy of the Jews at the time, who felt pity on him and actually picked him up, gave him water, nursed his wounds, gave him vinegar and oil, and took him to the inn inside. Put him on his donkey and took him to an inn inside the village. He paid the innkeeper for the next 2 days to take care of the man, and said if there was any other extra cost that the man had incurred, that he would come back and repay him. That is thou shalt love thy neighbor, is what Jesus told the man. That could happen to any of us. I mean, that is a Christian-based story, but also goes into the Muslim way of thinking of giving back to their community and helping their neighbors regardless of political or religious views. We as Christians here believe that it is very important to love everyone regardless of race, gender, or religious views. This could happen to any of us, obviously, an emotional crisis, financial crisis, or physical crisis like the Good Samaritan story. You never know when you're going to need help, and everywhere you turn to, no one's there to help you. And it might even be a Muslim in your community that comes to you and helps you. In this speech, I will inform you of the 5 basic pillars of Islam, much like our 10 commandments that we follow. First, I will inform you of the first and second pillars of Islam, the Shahada, which is the declaration of faith, and the Zalat, which is a prayer pillar. Second, I will inform you of the third and fourth pillar. The third pillar, the Zakat, or tithing. The fourth pillar, the Sawan, or the fasting pillar. And then finally, I will go over the 5th pillar of Islam, which is the Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca. First, I'm going to talk about the first and second pillars. The first pillar of Islam is the declaration of faith, of the Shahada. This is basically 2 affirmations from the holy book of the Quran that they believe in, which is the recitation from Allah who gave to the Prophet Muhammad. This basically states, and I quote the Quran, "There is no God but Allah, and I serve His Prophet. Muhammad serves and will always serve him. There is no other God." Basically, it is a public reciting of the Quran itself, basically proving that you are submitting yourself to Allah and the Muslim religion. You do this publicly, either in the mosque or church, or you'll do it in front of fellow Muslims to prove your faith to them. It is basically the first basic requirement of being a Muslim or a child of Islam. Now I'm going to go into the second pillar of Islam, which is the Salat, or the prayer pillar. Every Muslim is required to pray at least 5 times a day. 1, before sunrise. 2, in mid-morning. 3, mid-afternoon. 4, before sunset. And 5th, in mid-evening. Each time they pray, they usually perform a ritual called wudu, which is actually a washing of the hands, face, and feet, because they believe they must be clean before they talk to God. When they pray, they usually bow down on their knees and put their head to the ground and raise back up, chanting or reciting the Quran. Whenever they do this, they're always facing the holy city of Mecca, where the Kaaba is located, the holy black stone, which you'll see later. They believe that this is the holy city, this is where Allah revealed Himself or talked to Muhammad the Prophet and gave him the whole story of the Quran and how it should be read exactly word for word. It's not like our Bible where we actually absorb the stories and the parables in it and preach off of them to relate to our modern world. It's actually a direct reciting of it, and that's the only way it's supposed to be. There's no absorbing or breaking it down or anything. It's there in the words in stone. Secondly, I'm going to go into the third and fourth pillars of Islam. The third pillar being the zakat, which is the tithing pillar. Each financially able Muslim who has assets or annual income is required to give 2.5% of that income or assets to the church annually or monthly, depending on how your salary or income is broken down. It is a requirement. It is not hearsay or maybe or should I. It is a direct requirement from the Muslim faith to give 2.5%. Much like our tithing in the church, where we usually give somewhere between 5 or 10%, theirs is a requirement of 2.5 at least to give to the church or mosque to further the pay of religious leaders that work there, or to build or to help landscaping, or basically just assets to the church. There is also an involuntary way that they give back, which I talked about earlier with the story of the Good Samaritan. It's called a shadiq, which is a public giving back to your community. It's like volunteer work. It's strictly volunteer. It's going out and helping the schools or giving money to the community to fix problems that might occur anytime in your city or area that you live in. The fourth pillar of Islam, the Sawan, is the fasting pillar. All Muslims are required to fast for a whole entire month in the 9th month of the Islamic calendar they call Ramadan. This is considered to be the holiest time of the year. This is where the month where Allah revealed the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad, and that is considered the most. Every year they'll fast from sunrise to sunset, and they give up food, water, smoking, and sex. Everything's all given up from sunrise to sunset. And this is to prove their loyalty to their God, Allah, and their humility, and give self and their unselfishness and everything to the religion. Lastly, I'm going to go into the fifth pillar, which is the Hajj, or the pilgrimage to Mecca. Every Muslim who is financially and physically able, at least one time in their life, is required to make the journey to the holy city of Mecca and do the rituals that are required to gain the title of Haji, which is a religious title much held like our reverends or our clergy or elders in the church. But this is a religious title that will stay with their name for the rest of their entire life. It's one of the highest honors you can get as a Muslim. And they journey to the holy city of Mecca, and they do these rituals. There's about 7 of them that they actually do, that perform. One of them is actually where they go to the actual Kaaba, the holy black stone, as you can see here. And it's an amazing picture because you can get all the people that are involved in there. There's thousands and thousands of Muslims that go every year. And the first thing they do is they're going to journey around the black stone 7 times in a counterclockwise pattern. And then they're going to do ritual stonings of the devil. They're going to do runs between mountains back and forth, and they're going to stand in vigil, stand in just the holy presence of Mecca. All these rituals take several days to do. At the end, they shave all their heads, perform an animal sacrifice, and then they partake in the celebration of Eid al-Adha, which is a 3-day celebration. And that's in the Columbia Encyclopedia version, or volume 11. Version 6, I believe. And after they get all that done, they're actually considered a Haji, and that is part of their name for the rest of their entire lives, and it is a huge honor. In this speech, I've gone over the 5 pillars of Islam, which are the basic building blocks of the Muslim faith. Much like our 10 commandments, they are the basic pillars. There is much more that goes on past those 5 pillars. Those are the building blocks, the foundation of their church. I urge you all to go home and look up more about the Muslim religion, because it really is an amazing religion, and it is very important for all of us to know exactly how it works and why it works, because they are the fastest growing religion in the world today. I went over the first and second pillars of Islam, which are the prayer and the declaration of faith. I went over the third and fourth pillars, which are the tithing and the fasting, and I went over the 5th pillar, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca. All of these are basic requirements by Allah